Hello everyone, welcome to a series of Fruitful Events. My name is Hazel Berry, and this is a series in which I talk about my wellness journey and all the fruitful things I've learned from it that I feel I want to share with you. I'm so sorry that I didn't release anything the day after Thanksgiving. Reason being, all of my last week was in preparation for Thanksgiving, and then Thanksgiving happened. Yeah, I never ended up doing anything with the YouTube video. And for all intents and purposes, I do want to share that I am making it a point to also make this one a non-scripted episode, mainly because I realized that I don't need a script anymore. I mean, certain videos I feel I'm going to need a script for, but if I feel that I can do it off the cuff, why not do it? Why not show the girls that I can be an improv queen? So I've been looking forward to making this specific episode for a very long time, but I'm glad that I put it in towards the end of the season. And reason being is because I knew what I wanted to say when I set the intention for making this specific episode, but then life happened, and I'll expand on that in a bit, but life happened and some beautiful things happened on the way here. And now I feel that I'm ready to finally talk about things in present time, which I never do. So you're welcome. And two, did I say A? I never pay attention to the things I say. I just be yapping. But yeah, A is what I said. B or two, whatever, give or take. The thing I want to say about it too is that the beauty of having put it so late is that now that I've allowed myself to live through each episode and then see how I'm kind of like put to the test every week to kind of practice what I preach, I think now is a very interesting time to talk about the next topic, which is creativity and intentionality. So also worth mentioning, I do intend on this being a shorter episode for two reasons. One, I got somewhere to be, so we gotta shut this down. Secondly, I feel like because I know what I want to say, I think I can try to land the plane sooner, so we'll see how that goes. Want to challenge myself to see if I can make a shorter video. So we're about to find out together. So creativity and intentionality. What is it that comes with creating content that is not only intentional, but meaningful? I think part of the journey of making art or content or any form of media that is not only intentional but meaningful comes from pretty much what I've been yapping about to a lot of my friends and family recently, which is knowing not just why you're making the content, but also understanding who you are as a person in tandem with what it is you are creating. Let's use Fruitful Events as an example. So a little bit of an origin story, which I don't know if I've disclosed or not in this series so far, but bear with me, I'm gonna do it again. So when I first started this series back in 2018, and I had pretty much made this series as unflavorable events back in the day, the intention behind that specific series was to kind of make light of very unfortunate situations that have happened to me. But I also thought that it was like a cute way of tying in like, oh, my name is Hazel Berry, flavors, unflavorable, whatever. And what's funny is the idea was there. The execution, not so much. Obviously, I now call it Fruitful Events because I want to now talk about good things that have happened in my life, but also the good things I took away from situations that were not as fruitful or whatever have you. So now that I have kind of approached this series with that intention, now comes the question, why and how did I get here with that specific intention? If I were to level with you on how I got here, it goes all the way back to around the time I made Unflavorable Events. I was talking to my therapist and I pretty much told her at the time, that was my therapist at the time, I told her what my intention was for the series, why I was doing it, etc. She kind of looked at me and she was like, are you sure that that's something you want to do? And at first I thought that she was like challenging what I was doing because like maybe it was something I shouldn't be doing at this time. Maybe it was a little too premature. Maybe like whatever. Like I just didn't know what it was until she had explained to me that what she felt was out of place was not only the intention of what I was doing, but my means of executing said thing, and how the overall product is a reflection of not only how I view myself, but how I view the world. And at first I didn't get it then because I was like, what do you mean? But then as years went by and as I continued to evolve as an artist in many other ways, whether it was drag or makeup or even approaching like making YouTube content or just consuming content especially, and I'll get to that in a second, but eventually I kind of realized that there was a overall thing that we needed to kind of get to, which was that she was right. But she did share with me a specific comedian and a comedy special that this comedian did. All I know is that she's a white woman and a lesbian. That's as far as I got. And it's also on Netflix. That's as far as I got. But I remember watching it back then and thinking that the comedy was very bland and boring. And I even said that to her. But something that I could still acknowledge as I was watching it in real time from what I remember was that she talked about how she was a little self-deprecating in her approach to humor in the beginning of her career, and she was able to capitalize off of it. But when she realized that she had to evolve a bit to get the things that she wanted, she had to forfeit the way that she approached humor. And at that point, she had to realize that her relationship to humor had to change. How does that tie into creativity and intentionality? I'm glad you asked. So I understood in theory what she was saying, but I was still not relating to it because I wasn't laughing. I was looking at this white lady like, girl, where are the jokes? And that's why I kind of want to watch the thing again and share it the next time I see it, just because I want to kind of give more insight to it now that I'm an adult, and not that I wasn't an adult before, but now that I'm more evolved, I can kind of make a different kind of commentary on that. But all that to say, I understood in theory what my therapist and what that lady was saying, but I still didn't know how to approach it. I didn't know what that meant for me. I didn't know how, if I set the intention for evolution in my life, that would mean that the way I have relationships with, say, something like humor or say something like art would have to shift, because I too am evolving and changing, and so should my art, and so should the way I approach humor, things like that. And I don't think a lot of people really have that kind of mentality when we talk about things like this. I think maybe they do. Maybe I don't know. I can only really speak from my experience. But what I know to be true for me is that in order for me to evolve as a person, I had to understand that so did my art, and vice versa. If I wanted my art to evolve and I wanted my humor to evolve, I had to do a little bit of evolving as a person, generally speaking. So now let's backtrack a bit and talk about my relationship to drag. Now, obviously, if you've been following me, you would know that I haven't been doing drag for years. And there was that 1 year that I did it, but I don't count that, only because I was only performing for a crowd of like 5 every month. It is what it is. But anyway, I pretty much knew, even while I was like climbing towards my success with my drag career back in 2018, and I especially, once I took my hiatus, I realized that I wasn't really an artist. I was a female illusionist. And the difference being, if we're going to use language to kind of make the distinction, a female illusionist, it can still go hand in hand with drag, but the implication is that the intention behind what the artist is doing is to give the illusion of that of a female, even though they are not a female. And then drag, even though it's the same principle, the implication with that sets it apart from female illusion is that drag is art, and that drag has a point of view, and that drag has a story to tell. Female illusion doesn't have any other story to tell other than, oh, despite I was born this way, without having to do surgery, without having to do anything crazy, just with the power of makeup and a little bit of like zhuzhing up here and there, I too can look that of a woman. That's really all that is. And I didn't realize it, but that's what I was doing, even though my intention was supposed to be a drag artist. Now, how did we lose the plot? Once again, I'm glad you asked. I think I lost the plot because for me specifically, I had a lot of gender dysphoria and I used drag as a way to relieve that. But in my pursuit of doing that, I came across as a female illusionist because if you're gonna put trans feelings somewhere, they're still gonna look trans no matter how you do it. So there's that. And then when I look at like some of my friends that was doing drag at that time, I knew that they were artists and I could see it because they challenged their makeup every time they did a show. They changed one little thing each show and like tried to evolve what they were doing, whether it was like a different liner, a different eyebrow, a different whatever, or a different approach to clothing or a different approach to hairstyling. They were just shaking it up. And they also had a point of view where, like, for example, my friend Robin Fierce, who was on RuPaul's Drag Race season 15, something that she said to me that's pretty much stayed with me was that, like, her intention for her drag is to be fierce and sickening no matter what it is that she sets herself out to do. So if she is told to do a specific kind of style of drag, her approach to that would end up being whatever she views to be fierce and sickening and execute it with that same intention in mind. That's an artist. What I was doing, not that I don't think like what I was doing was invalid drag, but if I were to level with you, I didn't have a point of view because I didn't challenge myself to look beyond just looking pretty, because all I knew at that point was to look and present pretty. So, and I mean, I still do now. However, the difference being now for me is that even though I've mastered the art of looking cute and being cute and looking gorgeous and et cetera, I now have a story to tell because I've lived the experiences that I've personally lived, and I'm able to kind of use this as like the reason you're coming to me is because I look pretty, but the reason you're staying is because you're realizing that I have something meaningful to say based off of the experiences that I've gone through as a trans woman. Now, that is completely different from what I was doing before, which was just looking pretty. And yeah, I knew that I could entertain a crowd because I knew I was funny too. But like, humor can only go so far, which brings me back to what my therapist was saying before. So I noticed recently, and I was talking to a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine. We were talking about how my humor had changed because of her. Because when I first hung out with her, I mean, like, I've known her for like 10 years, but when I reconnected with her in the last 5, I noticed that her humor was different from mine, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. But now that I look back on it, the person I was when I reconnected with her was still using self-deprecating humor. And not to say that I don't do it now, but I still have a different way and a different relationship to that kind of humor, but I'll get to that in a second. All this to say, when I realized that the difference between my humor and hers back then was because I was being self-deprecating, I realize now that my humor has changed because it's similar to hers. And her humor is pointing out the silliness of life, right? Like, life is funny sometimes. There's levity to life, even though there's a lot of trauma, heartbreak, death, destruction. But there's also a lot of levity. And I think when you use humor as a way to not only bring levity to a situation, but also kind of make people think about why it is that your point of view is funny. It's because you've taken the time to get to know who you are as a person and assess, like, listen, yeah, life is rough, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to be a little silly, a little goofy, and point out the coincidences that life offers. And that, I think, is the secret sauce to the kind of humor I approach with now. Like, I still have some level of like, yeah, I'll make a suicide joke here and there, but that's because I tried to do it, you know? And I can make those jokes because I have a relationship to death now that I didn't before, and I have a different relationship with life now than I did then. So there's that. All of that to say, I think something to keep in mind when we talk about creativity and intentionality is this. Have you ever looked at or consumed a body of work where you were like, oh my God, that artist really thought everything through? Like, you look back on like the motifs they use, you look back on like however they compose the body of work, and like you see how all the dots connect. You're kind of like, oh my God, like they sat down and really thought about this. But when you take a look back at when an artist talks about like their behind the scenes of approaching set art, you'll notice that a lot of them will say something to the effect of like, yeah, I had an idea and I set myself out to do and create said idea, but I also let the universe do what it did and show me things that I needed to see to now create what I did. And I think that is something that we need to hone in on when we approach creativity and intentionality. A book that changed my life this year was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, who's the same artist and author who gave us Eat, Pray, Love, even though I never read that book and never saw that movie. But she kind of gave me a different perspective to creativity, which was that her relationship to spirituality was intertwined with how she approached creativity. I never in my life viewed art in that way. I always knew that sometimes art can be spiritual because you're like releasing something within you and you're having some catharsis in the approach of creating art and expressing yourself. But I never knew that, like, say for example, if we're gonna look at religion and spirituality as languages that you speak to God, I did not know that art is another form of speaking to God and speaking to the universe and noticing that it talks back to you and says things back to you. And if you're present enough to see it, now, I'm not telling you to believe in God or whatever, like whatever your spirituality is, you do you. But what I'm saying is that even if you're an atheist, I think at very baseline, if you're present enough to see the connections from one thing to another in your life, and you kind of see how poetic it looks and how beautiful it is when you make those connections, that's art. And when you're able to see those things, you're able to create those things, and you're able to put that in your body of work and share that with the world. So all this to say, with Fruitful Events, it all ties in because my name is Hazel Berry. Strawberries, berries, whatever, they're fruits. Fruits are fruitful, and the things I'm talking about are fruitful. And when we talk about planting the seeds of whatever intention you want to set out, you end up watering those seeds, and before you know it, you end up getting what you want. And it takes a little bit of patience and time to get there, but you do. And I think between my intention for sharing Fruitful Events and things that I've learned, and also sharing them with you, is a byproduct of my version of planting the seeds that I needed to in my life to be able to take a look at the things that have happened and try to find a silver lining in all of it. So maybe this episode is just a way for you to kind of have a different relationship to not just humor, not just art, not just spirituality, and etc., but the universe. Like, all of it, I think, is interconnected. But what do I know? I'm going to end the video here, especially considering it's getting dark. But thank you guys for watching another series of Fruitful Events. My name is Hazel Berry. And if you like this video, give it a like, comment, subscribe, share with the class. And if you don't, I have eyes everywhere. I know how to hunt you down. thank you for joining me on this journey, and I thank you all for being a part of it. So thank you, and I'll see you when I do. Stay juicy.